Long ago, and far away, there lived an old storyteller. He travelled from village to village, telling stories and spinning tales of magic. His name was Jeremiah Grumbleweed, and although his clothes were old and patched, the teller of tales was the happiest little man that you ever could wish to meet. He sang strange and wonderful songs of gnomes and goblins as he went on his way. Over the grassy meadows and down the winding cobbled lane there were always great excitements. In each village he visited, when the children heard his happy tunes, they ran to meet him. They would make him step by the roadside, and as each looked in wonder, he would tell them tales of long ago. Some were old and some were new, but always they were sprinkled with a special kind of magic. Everyone who cared to listen would drift into a land far, far away. Even the birds high in the branches would stop their endless chirping, as the magic of his voice would fill the air. At night, when the children were tucked up warm in their beds, dreamy little eyes would close, and tousled little heads thought of magic as the dream weavers worked. Jeremiah Grumbleweed stayed for only one night in each village. By the first light of morning he would collect his belongings, which were few, tie them together in a neat bundle, and off he would go, taking the road that would lead him to the next village. For many years he travelled, the highways and the byways, telling stories of the little folk. One very cold December morning, when the snow lay thick upon the ground, and Christmas magic filled the air, Jeremiah was on his way to Flaxbury. It was so cold that he hurried through the snow. Soon he had to rest for a little while. Blowing his warm breath into his cold red hands, he rubbed them together and sat down near the cave of the old dell. He had often told stories of the dell and of the little folk who lived there. Now he was thinking only of his wet shoes and of how he would get to Flaxbury before nightfall. He sat pulling off his wet shoes and old worn-out woolen socks when he heard the sound of tiny bells, jingle, jangle, jingle, jangle. He turned around to put his old socks upon the ground. Then, trying to listen above the air, he heard nothing, only the breeze that blew icy upon his face. Jingle, jangle, jingle, jangle. There it goes again, he said loudly. Looking around, he saw an ugly little grey donkey pulling a beautiful wooden caravan. Jeremiah stared for a moment, only quite believing what he had seen. But there it was, as large as life. "Hello, my little friend. Is there one there?" he cried. Jeremiah was talking to the donkey, but there was no answer. Forgetting his bare feet, he ran over to the donkey and patted him. "What a lovely little fellow you are," he said. This was not quite true, for the poor little animal had long, floppy ears and the largest brown eyes that you ever saw. He didn't look much like a donkey at all, but Jeremiah was given to telling tales quite often. And anyway, tell the donkey that he was ugly might upset him. Maybe the little animal would give him a ride to Flaxbury, he thought. He strolled around the wooden caravan, amazed at the goblin-like figures carved about each side. Peering into the back, he saw that it was quite empty, except for a small, brightly coloured woven rug which lay on the floor. It looked cold, but at least it was dry, and Jeremiah decided to borrow the caravan for a while, just until he reached the village, and then he would bring it straight back to this very spot and leave it for the owner to find. He clambered inside, held the red reins and shook them, making tiny little bells jangle. "Away to Flaxbury," he cried. But the little donkey took no notice. "All right then," he shouted. "I'll go my own way, on my own as always." And with that he jumped down into the snow, furious at the stubborn little donkey. He'd forgotten his bare feet. The ground was freezing. He climbed back onto the caravan almost immediately. "I'll stay here tonight." But no longer, he mumbled to himself. The little donkey shook his head, which made many tiny bells jangle again. This made Jeremiah more angry, and he fumbled his way into the back of the caravan, pulled his coat tightly about him soundly. He tossed and turned all night. About midnight the sound of bells startled him. It's that donkey again, he thought. Perhaps he decided to move after all. As he looked out of the small, neatly carved windows, he saw the strangest sight. Tiny figures seemed to jump down into the snow. They were the very same figures that had been carved into the side of the caravan. They all joined hands and formed a circle. Around and around they went, dancing and chanting. We are the folk who spin the webs and weave the dreams of sleepy heads, sewing, cutting, weaving, mending, telling stories never ending. Scare away the night horse black, over bright new looms go clickety-clack, clickety-clickety, clickety-clack. Their dancing stopped, they formed a line, one in front of the other, and the tiny folk lead the little donkey and the caravan down into Flaxbury Cavern. On they went towards a strange magical light, which grew brighter as they travelled along. The fairy light completely surrounded the little land as they went deeper and deeper into the cavern. Stairs danced about the magic light, which found its way into each and every corner. Strange and wonderful music filled the air, and as Jeremiah looked in wonder, he saw tiny lanterns hung high in the roof of the cavern. Stars seemed to twinkle in each and every lantern, which made the magic light dance. At last the tiny folk came to halt. Jeremiah was led towards fairy steps. They spiralled and seemed to go on forever. A wall grew around and about the steps that glistened with gold and silver. One by one the little folk climbed the last step and waited for the old storyteller. The little donkey and the caravan were there too, waiting, and Jeremiah knew that the magic was at work, for the little donkey could not have climbed those steps without help of some sort of magic. Jeremiah was called by one of the little folk. He was led again. To his surprise the sun was shining, and the brightly coloured rainbow drifted over a pale blue sky. Everyone was busy, weaving and mending and sewing, just as their long song had told the little folk, sang another song as they worked. Walking along he wondered, was it all just a dream, or had he learned the secret of telling tales? As he reached the entrance of the cave his steps quickened, for there, waiting for him, was a little grey donkey, towing a lovely wooden caravan. Upon the seat of the caravan was a tiny pair of old wooden socks and his old worn-out shoes. Jeremiah hurried to the donkey, patted him, and climbed onto the little wooden seat. He held the red reins which shook the tiny silver bells. "Away to Flaxbury," he cried. "We have 1,000 stories to tell." The donkey trotted along, nodding his head, as though he understood everything. If you hear the soft tinkling of bells on a cold, windy night, it will probably be old Jeremiah Grumbleweed on his way to the next village.